Today we're going to start the process of making the doors and windows for the Naparima. And there's quite a few doors and windows. We have 17 cabin doors, 3 engine room doors, and with the windows it's much more complicated. We have 3 12-inch, 3 15-inch, 3 16-inch, 35 18-inch, 12 21-inch, and 6 24-inch windows. So there's no question we need to make up a jig to be able to mass produce these and to make sure they all look exactly the same. The first thing we do is to work out the actual door itself. It's 73.5 inches. Probably was a 72-inch door, but anyway, 73.5 inches is what John wrote. And it's 24 inches across. So we need to cut out frames, and these pieces in the center are called rails. This is referred to as a rail, but some people might actually refer to it as a mullion. In the case of the top rail, it's 4.5 inches. The bottom rail is 7.5 inches, and the center rail is 10.5 inches. And then we have different spacings. In the case of the bottom part of the door, it's 22.5 inches, and the top part of the door is 28.5 inches. And so we have to cut out all the various pieces that will make up this door. And so to do that, what we're going to do is cut out pieces and stick them, because we're going to make a bit of a jig. And this is basically how we will do it. Sorry. This is how we will do it. Make sure they're absolutely square. Stick a number of these together and then put them through the Jimbon saw and cut them out. This will be a finished door with the rails in place, and then we can fill in the centers depending on the particular look that the model calls for. In this case, these are actually the windows, because we've made up the doors already. These are just some of the doors. I highly recommend that when you're going to make up these doors and windows that you make many more than you actually need, because the odds of them breaking or some sort of error is fairly high. In the case of the 18-inch windows that we're going to make today, I actually made 31 and we only need 24. And here are all the components that have been set out to make up the 24-inch windows. These are the frames, all cut to size, and these would be the rails, and the centerpiece would be the mullion. Here I have the details of the windows, and in my case, each of the rails are exactly the same for this particular window. The most important part, you'll see how I'm lining these up here, is to get the grain right, so that when we go to slice these on the table, so that in this case the grain is running this way and this way, so that you get the strongest possible frame. And that's really the challenge. If this was done like that, which is the grain working up and down, for instance, the odds of this piece breaking is fairly high. Just for those who might be confused, this is the end grain, and this is the direction of the grain on the wood. This is what we're looking for. We mix up small batches of 5-minute epoxy and carefully hold the pieces in place, trying to make sure that they don't slip or move at all, and then clamp them to make sure that we get a nice good join. Now we leave that to dry. I'm using 5-minute epoxy, which makes it real tight, but I want to finish the doors. Maybe I should have used a longer 30-minute epoxy, But that means each time I stick one piece, I have to wait 30 minutes before I stick the next piece. Now we can start taking them apart. And the most important thing we need to do now is to clean up the insides. It's just so much easier to clean it now than when the pieces are done. To make sure that the centerpiece is spaced correctly, I've made up a spacer and I place that inside the door and then push the center rail in place, and that means that every single one is going to be again in exactly the same place. So when you're looking for consistency, this is very important. Although not shown here, I did make some mistakes and the pieces did slip and I had to reject those pieces. Well, we're just about cleaning them up. The second rail is in. Again, I can't emphasize enough to clean it up, and if you're using epoxy, of course, you clean it up before it gets too hard. If you're using PVA, you can do this much easier with water. But I just feel we need the strength of the epoxy to hold these pieces together. This is the ideal size because it's going to give you more doors or windows. As you can see, this is not closed. I'm not sure why, because it was absolutely square. Maybe we've got a little bend in the frame. Anyway, we'll set the next piece on and go from there. Not sure how this happened, but you can see this one slipped. So that means I'm probably only going to get doors out of this side, which is unfortunate. So I cut it off and restuck since I had extra pieces. So we'll see how that goes. Now they're all done, and we just clean them up on a piece of sandpaper. Again, why? Because it's just easier to do it now. And we're going to stick these on now. Clamp them in place. So here we have them all done. I'm gonna wait until another 12-14 hours to let the epoxy really harden. It normally takes 24 hours. And then tomorrow we'll put it on the Jim Barnes saw and start cutting off the various windows. It's next morning and the pieces have dried. The epoxy has had a good 24 hours, so it's as hard as it's going to get. And now we just go on the table saw and cut the pieces out. Unfortunately, the depth of cut isn't big enough to cut the door in one pass, which would be ideal. But it works just fine. You just take your time. And in the case of this blade, I was able to get it right down to the frame, so there's no chance of a line in the center, which can happen. Out of that piece, we've got 8 windows, 12 more to go. Sorry, 9 windows. We needed 24, and we've actually made 31 pieces, and I still have a blank that I could make probably another 8 to 10 pieces. So it's been a very, very productive little exercise. And now we'll go on to the different sizes, and then we'll start to put the different inserts into the windows. Now we're starting to make the deck houses, and the first room we're making is the engine room, and we realize that the doors and the windows are different from the other deck houses. The door would have been flush mounted, and the windows would not necessarily be ones that would open. This room, the walls would be steel, and we're going to scribe the door in rather than cut it out. It would simply make no sense to do that. And then we've rebated down, we did this on the milling machine, a strip to hold a piece of plastic so that we can clean up, paint, and then simply put this plastic in, and there's no chance of any glue getting on the plastic that you'd see from the outside. And we fit that on the model just to make sure everything is right, and then we'll send it to paint. In the next video, we'll look at the finishes and how we complete the doors and windows.